The exploration vessel, Dauntless, drifted silently through the dark sea of stars, its silver hull marked by scratches from a recent encounter. The crew had faced rogue defense drones near an abandoned mining station, and although they had escaped, without serious damage, the ship carried wounds that needed attention. A few panels were scorched, and a faint vibration ran through the corridors, reminding everyone that Dauntless was tired and deserved a moment of care. Commander Mason stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the giant structure that filled the view screen. It was the Therai Medical Station, a vast and gleaming hub that floated like a jewel against the black backdrop of space. Shaped almost like a spiral seashell, it radiated soft blue light. Thousands of windows dotted its surface, glowing warmly, as if the station itself was alive. "Docking request accepted," the helmsman announced. "We are clear to approach Bay 12. Mason exhaled with relief. "Good. Let's not give those engineers more excuses to say we don't take care of our ship." The Dauntless slid gracefully into the docking bay. Massive doors closed behind it, sealing the ship inside a cavern of steel and light. Unlike human stations, which often smelled faintly of oil and metal, the Therai station released a gentle fragrance, almost like fresh air after rain. The crew gathered at the airlock, helmets tucked under their arms. There was a mix of excitement and nervousness. The Therai were famous for their healing skills, but few humans had seen their facilities up close. When the airlock opened, a group of Therai healers stepped forward to welcome them. The aliens were tall, their smooth skin glowing faintly like polished stone. Each had 3 large eyes shimmering in shades of green and silver, which blinked slowly as they studied the humans. Their voices, when they spoke, carried a musical tone, soft yet clear. "Welcome, travelers," one of them said, bowing slightly. "We are honored to care for your vessel." Mason nodded politely. "We appreciate the help. Our hull took a beating, and a few of our people need medical checks. Nothing serious, but it's better to be safe." The Therai guided the humans into a long corridor filled with glowing panels. The walls pulsed faintly as if the station itself was breathing. The humans whispered among themselves, amazed by the design. Everything here seemed alive, grown rather than built. Among the welcoming party was a younger Therai, clearly less experienced than the others. She moved quickly, her eyes darting from human to human, filled with curiosity. Her name was Narael, though the crew would soon simply call her Nara. As the group walked, Mason brushed his arm against a panel, reopening a small cut he had received earlier in the skirmish. A thin line of blood appeared on his skin, nothing more than a scratch. Mason hardly noticed, but Narael's 3 eyes widened instantly. She gasped, stepping closer. "You're leaking," she exclaimed, her voice filled with alarm. Then, tilting her head with fascination, she added in a softer tone, "Can I examine it?" The corridor went silent. A few of the human crew stifled chuckles while Mason raised his eyebrows, surprised by the reaction. "It's just a cut," Mason said lightly. "Humans bleed sometimes. No danger." But Narael was not satisfied. She leaned closer, studying, the crimson drop sliding down Mason's arm. "Your body lets life fluid escape so freely, and yet you walk unharmed?" The humans exchanged amused looks. For them, bleeding was ordinary. For the Therai, it was clearly shocking. One of the older healers placed a calming hand on Narael's shoulder. "Do not alarm our guests," he said gently. "But she is right, Commander. To us, this is unusual." Mason allowed himself a small laugh. "Unusual for you, perhaps. For us, it's just Tuesday." Narael's eyes sparkled with unfiltered curiosity. She reached into a pouch at her side, producing a small scanning tool shaped like a flower bud. "If you permit," she asked eagerly, "I would very much like to study how you survive such damage. It should not be possible." The commander hesitated, but then shrugged. "Why not? Just don't poke too hard." The young nurse carefully waved the scanner near his cut. The device projected a faint halo of light, capturing images of the wound. As she studied the readings, her eyes grew wider with every second. "Incredible," she whispered. "The damaged tissue is closing on its own. No regeneration chamber, no cell replacement gel, just sealing itself naturally. The other Theri nodded thoughtfully but without the same level of amazement. They had long accepted that humans were different, though they never quite understood why. But to Narael, this was a discovery worth more than gold. "Does it not hurt you?" she asked softly. "Of course it hurts," Mason replied with a grin. "But we get used to it. It's part of being human." Her three eyes blinked slowly, trying to comprehend. Pain is a companion, and bleeding is survival. Strange, beautiful, dangerous. The group continued walking, but from that moment onward, Narael's attention was fixed on the humans. She followed closely, asking quiet questions. Why did their blood have color? Why did they not shed damaged skin like the Theri did? Why did they carry scars as if they were badges? The humans found her questions both amusing and endearing. To them, bleeding was just a sign to wash up and apply a bandage. To Narael, it was a living mystery waiting to be solved. Later, when they reached the main medical chamber, the difference between species became even clearer. The chamber was filled with glowing cocoons where Theri patients rested, their injuries being absorbed and healed by living tissue. Narael proudly explained how her people regrew damaged parts without scars or pain. But when she compared this to the human way of healing, she shook her head in wonder. "We mend by replacement," she said softly. "But you mend by endurance. You survive with what remains. It is not weakness. It is something else." Mason only smiled, not realizing how important her words would later become. For now, the Yai Bay humans were simply glad to have repairs underway and medical checks completed. They did not know that Narael's innocent curiosity about leaking would soon grow into a bond that could change everything, because sometimes the smallest scratch tells the greatest story. The medical chamber of the Theri station hummed with soft life energy, the walls pulsing in gentle waves. Humans and Theri moved among the pods, each tending to the wounded or examining diagnostic panels. Commander Mason and his crew were being carefully checked, though their injuries were minor. Yet for Narael, the young Theri nurse, the humans themselves were far more fascinating than any wound or scan. Since the first moment she saw Mason's cut, she had been unable to stop thinking about the human body. She followed the crew wherever they went, not in a way that would make them uncomfortable, but with endless curiosity. Her three eyes blinked constantly, scanning, analyzing, recording. Every tiny movement, every subtle reaction to pain or strain was noted in her mind and on the station's floating data pads. "Commander Mason," Narael said one morning as the humans walked past the herb gardens where Theri plants healed, faster under ultraviolet light. "May I ask you a question?" Mason glanced at her and raised an eyebrow. "Depends. Is it about my bleeding?" She gave a small, amused smile. "Yes, and no. It is about your entire body. I cannot understand how it endures, how it repairs itself, how it survives without constant regeneration." "Simple," Mason said with a small shrug. "We don't think about it too much. We scrape, we bruise, we bleed, we get tired, but we keep moving. That's all there is to it." Narael's three eyes blinked in unison, her fingers tracing the air as she tried to visualize his words. "But you should not move. You should pause, mend, regenerate. Yet you do not. You continue. It amazes me." Over the next few hours, Narael asked questions that seemed endless. Each query revealed how human biology was different from Theri biology, and each answer gave her more respect for their resilience. "Why does your blood carry iron? Do you not lose strength when it flows? Why do your skin cells not grow back if torn? Why leave scars? Why does pain not stop you from action? Do you not collapse?" At first, the humans answered lightly with jokes or casual explanations, but gradually, Narael's fascination began to reveal something deeper. The Theri were strong in regeneration, yes, but they were fragile in endurance. Their bodies healed perfectly if left undisturbed, but they could not resist pain or stress in the same way humans could. Humans, in contrast, adapted to damage, suffering, and environmental challenges with remarkable persistence. One afternoon, in a quiet part of the station, Nariel carefully approached Mason again. She carried a small, delicate tool, shaped like a flower but with glowing threads along its edges. "Commander, may I study a minor wound more closely?" she asked, her voice almost trembling with excitement. Mason held up his arm, showing a tiny scratch that had barely broken the skin. "If you must," he said, smiling. "But don't poke too much." Nariel's hands moved with precise grace as she scanned the cut. Light waves flowed across his skin, illuminating the microscopic repair processes that were taking place naturally. She leaned closer, fascinated, her eyes widening as she realized that the human body had systems even the Therai could not replicate. You do this naturally?" she whispered, almost afraid to speak aloud. "No regeneration pods, no energy infusion, nothing but your own body repairing itself?" Mason nodded. "Exactly. It's slow, sure, and sometimes we leave scars, but it works. It always works." The young nurse stepped back, spinning slowly as if trying to absorb the wonder of it. "And yet you survive injuries that would end any Therai. You endure." The crew, who had been watching from a short distance, smiled quietly. To them, enduring pain was ordinary, but watching Nariel's amazement reminded them how extraordinary humans could be, seen from another perspective. Over the next several days, Nariel followed the crew everywhere, observing, asking, and sometimes experimenting with harmless tests. She measured their pulse during routine activity, noted how their skin responded to minor injuries, and even watched how humans consumed and metabolized food differently than Therai. She discovered that humans could keep functioning on minimal rest, digest a variety of foods, and heal without any external aid. The Therai elders noticed her intense interest and raised an eyebrow. "Do not overwhelm the humans," one said gently. "Curiosity is good, but respect is better." Nariel nodded, but in her heart, she felt the humans' resilience was worth every second of study. She had always thought her species was superior in every way: regeneration, healing, adaptation to injury. Yet here were beings who, though fragile, could survive, recover, and continue simply by enduring. One afternoon, the station's alarm sounded, a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the corridors. The crew rushed to a monitoring console, and Nariel followed close behind. "There is a minor hull breach on the lower bay," Mason read aloud. "Nothing critical, but it must be checked immediately." Without hesitation, the human crew donned their suits and moved to the affected area. Nariel watched as they worked efficiently, despite the tight space and the stress of the situation. She noticed that while the Therai would often pause, assessing their condition before acting, the humans pushed forward regardless of discomfort or risk. When the repair was completed, Nariel approached Mason again. Her 3 eyes glimmered with newfound respect. "Commander, you do not pause. You do not wait for comfort. You act despite injury. You persist." Mason laughed softly. "It's called stubbornness." "But it is more than stubbornness," Nariel insisted. "It is survival. You survive where we might fail. You endure where we regenerate. It is remarkable." From that day forward, Nariel became almost inseparable from the human crew. She learned to appreciate their habits, their routines, and their ability to improvise under pressure. She discovered that their endurance was not just physical, it was mental, emotional, and collective. Humans could inspire one another to continue, even when their bodies protested, and they could adapt in ways that the Therai never had to. She began to record everything in her notes, labeling each page with observations such as, "Human resilience exceeds expectation. Weakness is illusionary. Adaptation is inherent. Bleeding is not fatal. It is a sign of life." Even as she recorded, Nariel realized something unexpected. She was no longer just studying humans for science. She was learning from them. Their persistence, their humor in the face of danger, their ability to continue despite pain. It was shaping her understanding of life itself. At the end of the day, as the humans returned to their quarters, Narael lingered behind. She looked at Mason with something like awe in her eyes. "Commander," she said softly, "I have learned something. What I thought was a flaw, your bleeding, your scars, your endurance, is actually strength. True strength. You are not weak. You are extraordinary." Mason raised an eyebrow and smiled. "We humans like to call it stubborn, Nara, but I'll take extraordinary if you do." Narael's eyes shimmered as she made her way back to her station. For the first time, she felt that humans were more than just subjects of study. They were teachers, showing her that survival was not just about healing, it was about enduring, adapting and never giving up no matter the challenge. And for Narael, the fascination that began with a simple scratch on a commander's arm was turning into something far greater, an understanding that humans, though imperfect, had a kind of power no Therai had ever possessed. The young nurse returned to her lab, her heart racing with excitement. She opened a fresh datapad and began writing. "The human body defies expectation. It is fragile, yet unbreakable. It bleeds, yet thrives. It is alive in a way we have never seen before." Little did she know this fascination would soon be tested in ways she could never imagine, when the station faced a threat that no regeneration chamber, no healing cocoon could prevent. But for now, Narael watched, learned, and marveled. And, the humans unaware of the impression they had made, went about their routine, never knowing that their simple resilience had captured the heart of an alien nurse. The Therai station usually hummed with a quiet, gentle rhythm, as if it were alive in perfect balance. Pods glowed with soothing light, hallways shimmered softly, and the air itself felt calm and safe. But on this day, a ripple of disturbance moved through the station like an invisible wave. Narael sensed it first before the alarm sounded. Something was wrong. She was walking beside Commander Mason, showing him the station's botanical garden, when the first alarm echoed, a low, deep hum that vibrated through every corridor. The gentle light of the station flickered as automated messages began to repeat. "Containment breach detected. Biohazard alert. All personnel proceed to designated safe zones." Mason's brow furrowed. Biohazard? What kind? Narael's eyes narrowed as she accessed her portable scanner. The data filled the air in holographic form, displaying a terrifying pattern. A strange pathogen was spreading rapidly among the Therai staff. It attacked the regenerative system, preventing their bodies from healing naturally. For the first time, Narael's people were not just injured, they were at risk of permanent harm. "Commander." "This is serious," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It is affecting the regeneration centers. Without intervention, the healers will fail. They will not survive this." Mason's crew exchanged worried glances. Though humans could not regenerate like Therai, they had strong immune systems. Narael's panic reminded them that their presence might be the difference between life and death for the alien staff. The crew split immediately. Some went to assist with containment, while the human medical officers began examining the first infected Therai. Narael stayed close to the commander, watching as her colleagues fell ill one by one. Their glowing skin dimmed, their strength waned, and even simple movements became difficult. "This is worse than anything I expected," Narael murmured, gripping Mason's arm. "We have no cure. No regeneration will work." One of the Therai elders staggered to her side, barely able to maintain posture. His eyes, usually calm and wise, reflected fear. "Narael, seek help. The humans, they may hold the key." It was a bitter irony. For so long, the Therai had considered themselves superior in healing and endurance. Now the very humans they had studied as fragile were their only hope. The first infected Therai patient convulsed on the floor, their pod lights flickering as the regenerative process failed completely. Narael ran to them, her hands hovering, helplessly. In all her training, she had never seen a Therai fail like this. Panic gripped her. Mason knelt beside her. "Narael, what can we do? How can we help?" She hesitated, trying to analyze the situation quickly. The pathogen disrupted cellular regeneration, but it did not affect humans in the same way. Their immune systems responded naturally, fighting infections with antibodies, white blood cells, and internal defense mechanisms. You, she said, pointing to the humans, you are immune. You can survive. Perhaps your blood, your antibodies, they may help us. Mason nodded. We'll do whatever we can. Tell me what to do. The human medical officers quickly set up a sterile laboratory space. They drew small samples of blood from willing crew members, running rapid analyses to identify antibodies that could neutralize the alien pathogen. Nariel observed everything, fascinated and anxious. She had never imagined using human blood in this way, but desperation left no room for hesitation. As the Theri elders lay weakened, she helped coordinate efforts. She guided human officers to the most critical patients, monitored vital signs, and even tried small experimental treatments under careful supervision. Hours passed and the situation grew more tense. The infection spread faster than they anticipated, affecting even the youngest Theri healers. Nariel's heart raced with every flicker of pod lights, every labored breath from her colleagues. At one point, she herself began to feel dizzy. One of the pathogen's airborne particles must have reached her. Her skin, usually shimmering like polished pearl, dulled slightly. She gasped, clutching the edge of a console for support. "You're infected?" Mason asked sharply, alarm clear in his voice. "Yes, but I am not fully incapacitated yet," she said. "I can continue, but I need your help. Please." The human crew did not hesitate. They surrounded her, drawing blood and scanning for infection markers. To Nariel's surprise, the human's immune response was strong enough not only to resist the pathogen, but to produce antibodies that could be transferred to the Theri. As the first doses of human-derived serum were administered, the station held its collective breath. Nariel watched as the Theri patients slowly began to regain color in their skin. Their strength returned, at first weakly, then steadily. The young nurse's heart swelled with awe and gratitude. For hours, they worked in a synchronized effort. Humans drew blood, processed antibodies, and injected small doses into the most critical patients. Nariel and the other Theri monitored vital signs, ensuring no mistakes occurred. Finally, as the station lights dimmed to their soft ambient glow, the tide turned. The pathogen's spread slowed, halted, and began to reverse. Infected Theri regained strength, their regenerative systems slowly coming back online. Nariel stood in the center of the lab, exhausted but elated. She looked around at the humans who were also tired but smiling with quiet satisfaction. You saved us," she whispered, her 3 eyes wide with wonder. I thought humans were weak, fragile. You are strong beyond measure. Not because your bodies heal perfectly, but because you endure." Mason shook his head, smiling. "We just do what we can, and we don't give up." The Theri elders approached Nariel and the human crew. One of them, his skin still dimmed from the infection, bowed deeply. "I have underestimated your species," he said solemnly. "You are more resilient than we imagined. You do not regenerate, yet you endure. You do not heal instantly, yet you persist. For this, we are grateful." Nariel, tears glimmering in her eyes, nodded. She had always believed that Theri biology was superior, but now she realized that survival was not only about perfect regeneration, it was about courage, endurance, and the will to continue even when the body is fragile. As the emergency subsided, Nariel carefully examined her own body, still tinged, with faint fatigue from exposure. She smiled faintly. "If humans can survive this, maybe I can too," she whispered. The humans, tired but unbroken, were preparing to return to their quarters. Mason patted Nariel gently on the shoulder. "Looks like your fascination with us just got a lot deeper, huh?" She nodded, her eyes glimmering. "Yes. I see now that what I thought was weakness Your bleeding, your fatigue, your limits is actually strength. True strength. Humans survive where we might fail. For the first time, Nariel felt a deep respect that went beyond curiosity. She was inspired, not by technology or regeneration, but by human endurance, their ability to adapt, and their unwillingness to give up. As the humans walked toward their quarters, Nariel turned back to the lab, watching the Theri healers regain strength. The station was alive again, humming gently, and she realized that this crisis had done something remarkable. It had changed her perspective completely. No longer would she see humans as simply fragile or strange. She understood now that their survival was built on resilience, adaptability, and the courage to continue in the face of danger. And though the station was calm once more, Nariel knew this was only the beginning. There would be other challenges, other crises, but now she had a new understanding. Humanity, though imperfect, carried a strength unlike anything she had ever encountered. As the sun-like lights of the station dimmed into the evening cycle, she wrote in her personal data pad, "The human body is not perfect. It is not immortal, but it persists. It bleeds, it scars, it suffers, and yet it endures. In this it is superior, not in healing, but in life itself." Little did Nariel know, this lesson would prepare her and her people for challenges, even greater than a single pathogen. But for now, the station rested, the humans recovered, and the Theri had learned an invaluable truth. Sometimes, the most fragile-looking beings are the strongest of all. The Theri medical station had returned to its usual rhythm after the recent crisis, but the atmosphere felt different now. The soft hum of energy that flowed through the corridors seemed steadier, more confident, yet a subtle tension lingered. For Nariel, nothing could feel normal anymore. Her fascination with humans had deepened into admiration, and she found herself constantly observing them, trying to understand their endurance, their adaptability, and the quiet strength that had saved her people. Nariel moved through the station's corridors with a mixture of excitement and focus. Today, she was leading a study with the human medical officers to analyze the effects of the human antibodies on the Theri pathogen. It was a delicate process requiring precision and patience, and she was determined to learn everything she could. "Commander Mason," she called gently as he passed by, "would you assist me with this observation? I want to see the cellular response of Theri tissue after the serum administration." Mason smiled and nodded. "Of course, Nara. Lead the way." They entered a specialized lab chamber filled with glowing panels and suspended diagnostic tools. Several Theri, still recovering, were carefully monitored as the hybrid serum flowed through their systems. Nariel watched with awe as the serum, derived from human antibodies, neutralized the pathogen with remarkable efficiency. The Theri tissues, once sluggish and dim, began to respond energetically, regenerating and stabilizing faster than before. "It's extraordinary," Nariel murmured, her voice trembling slightly. "Your blood, your immune system, it contains a strength we never anticipated." One of the human medical officers, Dr. Lind, smiled. "We're just using what our bodies naturally do. Our immune systems have to handle countless pathogens. Your people are amazing, but your regenerative systems are specialized. You heal perfectly but slowly in comparison to our immune response." Nariel tilted her head, absorbing every word. "So, your survival does not come from perfect healing. It comes from persistence, adaptation. Your body fights even when injured. It is not flawless, but it is resilient." "Yes," Mason said softly. "That's humans in a nutshell. We survive because we keep going, not because we can't break. We endure because we have to, and we adapt to whatever life throws at us." The young Theri nurse scribbled notes furiously on her floating data pad. Every line, every observation, added to her understanding. She had always believed that strength came from regeneration, perfection, and precision, but humans had shown her a new definition: strength born of endurance, courage, and adaptability. Over the next several days, Nariel worked closely with the human crew, conducting controlled studies and observing interactions between species. She learned how humans could survive environmental stressors that Theri could not, how they managed energy efficiently, and how their social bonds strengthened their resolve in the face of danger. She discovered that humans' weaknesses, their susceptibility to disease, fatigue, and injury, were actually indicators of their unique form of strength. During one observation session, Narelle noticed a small group of humans laughing quietly as they shared a meal. Despite the recent crisis, despite exhaustion, they remained cheerful, resilient, and connected. She realized that this mental and emotional endurance was as important as the physical resilience she had already admired. "Commander Mason," she said thoughtfully, "I understand now. Your species does not rely solely on regeneration, perfection, or flawless healing. You survive through persistence, collaboration, and willpower. You endure physically, mentally, and emotionally. It is a remarkable combination." Mason chuckled. "You've been taking notes pretty fast. Glad you finally figured us out." Narelle's 3 eyes sparkled with intensity. "I cannot stop observing. Every small act, every interaction, every recovery. It teaches me something new. I had always assumed perfection was the pinnacle of life. Now I see that adaptation and resilience are far greater." Meanwhile, the Theri elders, still recovering from the pathogen, began to engage with the humans more directly. One elder, Virel, approached Mason with cautious respect. "You are not merely our guests. You are teachers. We underestimated your species. You endure where we rely on regeneration. Your strength lies not in healing, but in persistence." Mason inclined his head. "We just do what we can. Sometimes that's enough to make a difference." The human crew shared a look, recognizing that their ordinary acts, enduring fatigue, taking risks, and helping others, had become extraordinary in the eyes of the Theri. For Narelle, this recognition was profound. She had studied countless species in her lifetime, but humans were unlike any she had encountered. Later, Narelle requested a private session with Mason. They moved to a quiet observation deck overlooking the vast expanse of stars. The galaxy stretched infinitely, a reminder of how small yet significant their actions could be. "Commander," she began, "I have documented every observation, every interaction, and every response of your species. I now see humans as not merely fragile beings, but resilient, adaptive, and courageous. Your so-called weaknesses are, in truth, the very qualities that ensure survival. You are overflowing with strength." Mason smiled faintly. "Overflowing, huh? I like that. But I think you mean humans are persistent, stubborn, and hard to stop?" "Yes," Narelle agreed, a hint of amusement in her voice. "But overflowing feel right. You survive because you refuse to yield. You fight not because you are perfect, but because you endure. That is extraordinary." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Virel and several other Theri elders. They had requested a demonstration of the human serum's effect on their species. Narelle and the human medical officers prepared the experiment with precision, carefully introducing measured doses to fully recovered Theri volunteers. As the process unfolded, the elders observed closely. Their bodies responded with visible vigor, their energy returning in a steady, controlled manner. The hybrid serum, enhanced by human antibodies, demonstrated the perfect union of regeneration and adaptation. Narelle's eyes shimmered with pride. "This is proof," she whispered. "Humans do not merely survive by chance. They survive through their resilience, their will, and their ability to adapt. They teach us something our science alone cannot." "Explain." Virel, watching the results, spoke with solemnity. "We have long prided ourselves on our perfect healing. Yet we have learned today that survival is more than perfection. It is courage, endurance, and unity. Humans embody this truth in every moment of their lives." The words struck Narelle deeply. For so long she had studied the Theri as the ultimate standard. Now she realized that the humans' imperfections, their bleeding, scars, fatigue, and occasional errors were what made them strong. They endured because they had no other choice, and in doing so, they achieved something the Theri could not: true resilience. In the following days, Nariel began to compile a report, one that would be sent to the Central Theri Research Archives. The title alone reflected her profound shift in perspective. The Resilient Ones Who Leak. Every entry documented her observations, her newfound respect, and the lessons she had learned from humans. She wrote about their immune systems, their physical endurance, their mental and emotional strength, and the ways they inspired hope in others. She concluded that humans leaking was not weakness, but a symbol of life, persistence, and courage. The humans, meanwhile, continued their routine, unaware of the magnitude of Nariel's realization. They laughed, shared meals, repaired their ship, and assisted with the Theri station's ongoing tasks. Yet to Nariel, every act, every gesture, and every small effort was a lesson in survival and strength. One evening, as the station's lights dimmed for the artificial night cycle, Nariel stood alone on the observation deck staring at the stars. She reflected on the past weeks, the initial curiosity sparked by a simple scratch, the emergency that tested both species, and the discoveries that had followed. "I thought strength was perfection," she whispered to herself. But true strength is endurance. It is courage in the face of weakness. It is persistence when the body and mind are tired. Humans. They have shown me what life truly is. A soft chime indicated the arrival of Commander Mason, who had come to check on her. "Thinking again?" he asked, leaning against the railing. Nariel smiled faintly. "Yes, but not just thinking, learning. Your species has taught me more than any textbook ever could. You survive not by being perfect, but by refusing to give up. That is extraordinary." Mason chuckled quietly. "I'm glad to hear that. I hope your people take it seriously. They might have something to learn from us, too." Nariel nodded. "They will, and I will make sure they do. Humans are extraordinary, not because they cannot fail, but because they endure, because they persist, because they survive, even when everything seems against them." As the two gazed out into the infinite galaxy, Nariel knew one thing with certainty: humanity's greatest strength was not in technology, power, or perfect healing. It was in the courage to continue, the resilience to adapt, and the will to survive against all odds. And that lesson, she realized, would forever change her understanding of life, survival, and strength. The Theri station had settled into a calm rhythm once more. Pods glowed gently, corridors hummed with steady life energy, and the lingering tension from the recent pathogen crisis had finally eased. Yet for Nariel, the young Theri nurse, everything felt different. She moved with purpose through the corridors, her three eyes shining with curiosity, admiration, and a new understanding that would change not only her perspective, but that of her entire species. The humans aboard the station were busily finishing their work. Medical checks, minor repairs, and restocking supplies filled their day. But their presence was no longer just practical. It had become symbolic. They were teachers, witnesses, and a living example of resilience. Nariel approached Commander Mason in the observation deck, where the stars stretched endlessly across the blackness of space. "Commander," she said, her voice calm but filled with meaning, "I have written a report of my observations of what I have learned from you and your crew. It is unlike any report I have ever prepared." Mason looked at her, curious. "Really? What makes it different?" "I have always studied species to understand their biology, their capabilities, their healing. But I have never studied anything like this. Humans, your species survives not because you are perfect, but because you endure, you adapt, you persist, you continue, even when the odds are against you. That is the lesson I wish to share with my people." Mason smiled. "That's a good lesson. I think your people will be glad to hear it." Nariel nodded. She handed him a small data pad. "This is my final report. I call it The Resilient Ones Who Leak. It details your immune system, your endurance, your mental and emotional strength, and how these qualities allowed you to save my people during the crisis. It is not only a scientific account, but a lesson in life itself. Mason opened the pad and skimmed the notes. He could see the effort, the care, and the deep respect embedded in every observation. He looked at Narael and said softly, "You've captured something real, not just how we survive physically, but why. And that is the human way." Meanwhile, the Therai elders had gathered to review Narael's findings. They examined every page, every chart, every recorded observation. At first, some were skeptical, unwilling to accept that a species so different could embody such resilience. But as they read further, they began to understand. Virel, the elder who had witnessed the pathogen crisis firsthand, spoke slowly. "For centuries, we have relied on regeneration, on perfection. But humans, they endure. They survive not through flawless healing, but through will, courage, and persistence. We have much to learn from them." Other elders nodded in agreement. They saw that humans' weaknesses, bleeding, fatigue, susceptibility to illness, were not flaws but evidence of a deeper strength. Humans were fragile in appearance, yet unyielding in essence. They persisted where perfection alone could not guarantee survival. Narael felt a surge of pride. She had always respected the human crew, but now she understood that this admiration was more than personal. It was a recognition of a new standard of life. One that combined adaptability, courage, and endurance, proving that strength could exist in forms other than flawless regeneration. Over the next few days, cultural exchanges blossomed between humans and Therai. Narael guided small workshops, where human crew demonstrated practical survival techniques, ways to endure fatigue, and strategies for adapting to new challenges. The Therai listened intently, eager to learn. Even their advanced technology could not teach endurance in the same way human experience could. At mealtime, laughter filled the shared dining area. Humans told stories of their past missions, of minor accidents that turned into life lessons, and of times they survived against impossible odds. The Therai, inspired, asked questions, eager to understand the thought processes behind human persistence. Narael watched this interaction with fascination and quiet joy. She realized that survival was more than biology. It was mentality, spirit, and the choice to continue, even when circumstances were dire. One evening, Narael found herself standing beside Mason as the artificial sun of the station set over the observation deck. The golden light reflected on the human commander's face, highlighting a calm determination that had guided him through every challenge. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think strength meant perfection, that to survive one must be flawless. But I see now that it is not perfection, it is persistence, it is courage, it is refusing to give up." Mason nodded. "Exactly. And sometimes, that's the difference between life and death, between failing and succeeding. Humans survive because we refuse to quit, not because we are invincible." Narael smiled, a glow of understanding radiating from her. "You have taught me that life is not about avoiding failure or damage. It is about enduring, adapting, and continuing. Your species is overflowing with resilience. I am grateful to have learned from you." Mason placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "And I'm grateful for the chance to help your people. I think we've all learned something here." Later, Narael presented the final version of her report to the Therai Council. They read it in silence at first, taking in every observation. Then one by one they began to nod, murmuring affirmations of understanding. "This changes how we see humanity," Virel said at last. "They are not merely fragile guests, they are teachers, guides, and exemplars of resilience. We have much to learn from their persistence and courage." Narael's 3 eyes gleamed with pride. "And I will make sure that all Therai understand this. Humans are extraordinary, not because they are perfect, but because they endure, because they persist, because they survive. And in doing so, they inspire life itself." As the final days of the humans' stay approached, farewells were prepared. The crew packed their supplies, repaired their ship fully, and made final preparations for departure. Nariel escorted them to the docking bay, her heart heavy with admiration and gratitude. Before stepping onto the Dauntless, she turned to Mason. "Commander, if you ever return, and if you leak again, I will be ready to examine it. But this time with respect, not alarm, because now I understand that your endurance, your persistence, your willingness to survive, it is extraordinary." Mason laughed softly. "I'll keep that in mind, Nara. I think I've learned more from you than you have from me." The humans boarded the vessel, and as the docking clamps released, the Dauntless drifted smoothly into the open expanse of space. Narael waved from the observation deck, her eyes shining with quiet admiration. She knew that this experience would remain with her forever, not just as a scientific study, but as a life lesson in resilience and courage. The human ship disappeared among the stars. Narael returned to her station. She added one final note to her report. "Humanity teaches that strength is not perfection, but endurance. Weakness is not failure, but opportunity. To survive is to continue, to adapt, and to inspire. Humans, who bleed yet endure, who stumble, yet rise, have shown us that the greatest strength lies not in the body, but in the will to live." The Theri Council reviewed the note and agreed unanimously to include it in the Central Archives. Nariel knew that generations of Theri would study it, learning from humans as she had, and in the quiet of the station, as the lights dimmed for the artificial night, Nariel finally allowed herself to relax. She gazed at the stars, remembering the scratches, the bleeding, the persistence and the courage that had defined the humans she had come to respect. The universe was vast, filled with wonders, challenges, and life yet to be discovered. But Nariel knew one universal truth. Survival was not about perfection. It was about endurance, courage, and the choice to continue, no matter the odds. Humans had shown her that lesson, and in doing so, they had inspired a species, reshaped understanding, and proven once again that even the smallest acts of persistence could shine brighter than the stars themselves. And so, as the Dauntless disappeared into the endless cosmos, the Theri station thrummed with life, hope, and a newfound respect for the species that bled, endured, and survived against all odds. Humanity had left its mark, not in technology or power, but in courage, resilience, and the unyielding will to continue.